What happens when doctors don't listen? I was blessed as a young boy to have a good doctor named Elbridge Telford. I never knew him to be wrong. It gave me a great deal of trust and faith in doctors. A good man. A good doctor. But he retired and I had to go to a new doctor at the advice of friends. I went to a doctor named Gordon. I saw him about 2 different ailments and he was wrong on both occasions. Once he misdiagnosed something as an ulcer, but it wasn't an ulcer, even though I was telling him it was not an ulcer, that my stomach wasn't bothering me. It was pain in my guts, excruciating pain. Sometimes would put me to the floor. I went to another doctor after him who didn't listen to me, but based his diagnosis on the first doctor's misdiagnosis. So then he prescribed some drugs for me that almost killed me. Losing my faith in doctors. I broke this finger in softball. A Mormon doctor said it like this. About a week later, I was with a friend of mine that was a plastic surgeon. He asked what happened. I told him, softball injury, the ball jumped up and hit me right on the end of my finger. He said, oh my God, that'll end up being stuck as a hook. That's a sports injury. It's got a chip in there. It's just that he reset it the best he could. It's not straight, but it's better than having a hook. And it goes on and on. In any profession, you can have good, you can have bad, and you can have in between. But what happens when a doctor doesn't listen to you? It won't be good. It may cause you to be sicker. It may destroy your life. It can even kill you. In 1991, I had bypass surgery in San Diego. I needed 4 arteries to be bypassed. After the operation, I was in post-op. I was supposed to sleep for 12 to 18 hours, but 1 hour after surgery, I started waking up. I didn't open my eyes, and I was just listening to the people in the room. To my right was a large nurse. To my left was another smaller nurse, and I could tell by her voice that she was smaller, and she was calling out the oxygen blood content to the anesthesiologist. And she said, 95. I started waking up and I raised my left hand and signaled that I wanted to write a note. The oxygen nurse screamed at the anesthesiologist, he's awake, put him to sleep. The anesthesiologist said, I can't. I've given him everything I can legally give him. He won't stay asleep. Signaling, want to write a note. She brought me my clipboard and my pen. I wrote the note, can't breathe. The big nurse on my right screamed at me, breathe. I wrote, water in lungs. I had tubes down my throat that were supposed to be sucking the water out of my lungs. But what they had done is they had put the tubes all the way to the bottom of my lungs, and it was like trying to suck a milkshake through a straw with a straw on the bottom of the cup. It doesn't work. 94, she calls out. 93. As my brain was waking up, it was using more and more oxygen. I opened my eyes, looked around a bit, wrote more notes. And I remembered the story of Mama Cass, the singer, that died after surgery, complications due to an operation, and she had drowned in her own fluids. That's what was happening to me. So I wrote Mama Cass, hoping they'd remembered this. The big nurse screamed, breathe, damn it! 92, 91. The oxygen in my blood kept falling. I made a decision that at 74, if they didn't save my life, I would save it myself. because if I waited any longer, I might not be able to. I kept writing notes. They weren't hearing me. They weren't listening to me. They were reading the notes. They could read my handwriting, but they weren't listening. It kept falling. I kept writing more and more notes. It's getting down into the 70s now, and I wrote, I am drowning. 75. Then I wrote, I am dying. She calls out 74. So I start sitting up in bed. The big nurse tries to resist a bit, but she can't. She knows that my chest has been split open and I'm wired together with stainless steel wire, and any pressure on it will blow my chest wide open. I get up on my knees at the end of my bed and I reach for the mask that's got the tubes down my throat. The big nurse gets right in front of me, tries to reach up to stop my hand. I raised up my right fist and our eyes locked, and it told her, I will hit you in the face. She backed up. I pulled the tubes out, and when I did, I barfed all of this water out of my lungs. A giant gush that just flooded the floor. A trajectory vomit from my lungs, but my lungs were collapsed. So she ran and got the football. I call it the football, they call it the balloon. She put the mask over my mouth, and then she squeezed the football, the balloon, and inflated my lungs. The pain was so intense that sitting on my knees on the end of the bed, I just screamed one long scream until my oxygen was gone and my lungs collapsed again. So she re-inflated my lungs. And then it hurt, but not as much as the first time. And then I went, re-oxygenating my body. When I started sitting up, they began stabbing me in the back with hypodermics. I guess they found new laws to try to keep me anesthetized. Thank goodness it didn't work. But once I got oxygen back into my body, and the drugs of them stabbing me in the back, I laid back down and went to sleep. When I woke in my room many, many hours later, two of my friends were standing over me, looking at me with dreadful faces. I said, hi. I said, you look terrible. So I told them the story of what I've just been through. They didn't believe me. They thought I was hallucinating from the drugs. Then my doctor came in, talked for a few minutes, then he went into the bathroom and he came out and he had 2 handfuls of gauze, about 1.5 inches wide. 2 handfuls of it. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, the nurses just said you were a little testy when you woke up. And then he left. My friends were standing there and they had watched me wake up. So they knew I had been awake earlier. And they knew it wasn't the drugs that caused me to remember that. It was because I needed to save my own life. Now, how many times have you heard they died due to complications of surgery? That's what it would have been listed. It would have been listed, he died because of complications of surgery in 1991. But in reality, they were letting me drown because they weren't listening to me. Protect your family in post-op. You can't do anything about it in surgery, they won't let you in. But in post-op, protect them. Merry Christmas, kids. I love you. And you're always on my mind. I'm proud of you. And I know you're happy. And that makes me happy. But remember, when a doctor's not listening to you, nothing good is going to come out of it.